What's up, all you basketball fans out there? Welcome to ExceedTheHype.com. It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. Alright, today's video is about the Atlanta Hawks, man. And the Atlanta Hawks are one of those teams that are kind of moving in the opposite direction. People don't really remember that 2 years ago, LeBron's first year back in Cleveland, or is that 3 years now, the Hawks were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They won 60 games. Kyle Korver was an all-star. Paul Millsap was an all-star. Jeff Teague was an all-star. Atlanta, even though nobody probably gave them a realistic shot at getting past LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever, but they were a factor in the Eastern Conference. And just a couple years removed from that level of basketball, now they're a team that we wonder will even make a playoff appearance this year or for the foreseeable future. They are in bad need for talent. They need more talent on this team. I don't even know where to start. I would say they need a big man to kind of build around, but no, they chose not to do that. They traded away their stretch four. They traded away their big man, Dwight Howard. They traded away Jeff Teague. They traded away Kyle Korver. They traded away their whole core, plus the guys that they came to replace their old core, and they traded those guys away too. So now what you have is a team that's being based around Dennis Schroeder, basically. Dennis Schroeder, they're not quite an all-star point guard, but they hope he can become an all-star point guard. They're really quick guard who can get to the basket, who nobody can stay in front of, who's not a really great three-point shooter yet. I'm assuming, even though he has a funky shot, a funky set shot, flat set shot or whatever, I don't count him out. I think he can really become a better three-point shooter over time. So we'll see what happens with that. But ultimately, when you look at this Atlanta Hawks roster, it's not a whole lot that's there, man. I'm struggling looking at this to make this video or whatever, looking at this roster. Let's go down person by person and just really talk about who they have. They really need talent. In this league, you got to have talent to really be able to compete. They got a talented point guard, a point guard that was so talented that from the second day, he really showed signs that he can be something. They started plotting on Jeff Teague to move him on out of town, even though he was an all-star. But around, other than Dennis Schroeder, there's not much to really talk about. You got Luke Babbitt, a journeyman three-point shooter who's kind of one-dimensional, who's kind of questionable on defense or whatever. He did help out the Pelicans for a couple of years. Well, we all know the Pelicans have struggled so much to get talent around Anthony Davis, to try to fit pieces around Anthony Davis, to try to get anybody who's a competent basketball player to play along Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday and now DeMarcus Cousins. So he was one of these guys that they would plug in. Imagine the situation with Anthony Davis getting all the attention. You're going to get a lot of open jumpers. And then on defense, you got, you know, a really long 6'10" center / power forward that can clean up your mistakes defensively. And, you know, it still wasn't that great with them. So, kind of pass on Babbitt. Kent Bazemore. I do like Kent Bazemore as a glue guy type player. He can shoot. I noticed in the past couple of years, it looks like he worked on his ball handling skills or whatever, so he can kind of create off the dribble a little bit now. He's a gamer. There's something to be said for gamers, for people who get up for the challenge of trying to win a game, even if they're against a better team. We saw him come up big in a couple games. They beat the Cavs twice this year. I think it was probably even 3 times or whatever. 2 of them I know for sure were bad losses because the Cavs were up and in position to win, and Atlanta just powered back behind. You know, a lot of that was obviously Tim Hardaway Jr. and his performance or whatever. But Kent Bazemore is a nice piece. He's a nice piece to have on a team with other stars. A nice glue guy to kind of make everything, to help everything fit together seamlessly. But on this team, I don't know what he's going to be able to do. He might be one of the primary scoring options for this team because they just lack so much. Marco Bellinelli. We haven't really heard a whole lot from him in the recent years or whatever. He did have a stretch where he was pretty good, but he's getting older, and that's number one. And then, you know, he's been on these bad teams the last couple of years, so he's just kind of faded from relevance. DeAndre Bembry, I saw him a lot. We saw him last year play. I still don't have an opinion on him yet. From watching him, he doesn't move me in any way yet. Now, he's still a young player, so we'll see what he can come up with or whatever as far as improvements and things of that nature. He could, you know, end up being a good player. We don't know yet, basically. He got Nicholas Brucino. I'm not sure. I've never seen him. John Collins, not too familiar with him. Dwayne Dedmon, the Spur. Once again, a big man off the bench who can help provide some depth and a little bit of rim protection and some defensive versatility, but off the bench. Like, you can't really, if you are depending on him to play a key role for your team, you're in trouble, right? So you got Dwayne Dedmon, who's a good piece, but once again, he's a good piece if you have other talented players. You got Malcolm Delaney. Don't know much about him. Tyler Dorsey. If I'm not mistaken, isn't he the guy from Oregon? He was pretty awesome at Oregon. I didn't even know he ended up on the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know how I missed that. If I'm even thinking about the right person, he'll help because he was. If this is the person I'm thinking about, which I'm pretty sure, he'll help. Because he was pretty awesome at Oregon, so ultimately we'll see. You got Chris Humphries. Here's a challenge for anybody out there watching. What's the last 3 teams that Chris Humphries has played for? Once again, not somebody who's going to move the meter at all. Ilyasova, once again, he's somebody who's kind of, I won't say washed up yet. I still think he has some value as like a stretch 4. Once again, off the bench in limited minutes, but if he's one of the main contributors on your team, you're in trouble. There's a guy named Alpha Kaba. Not familiar with him. Believe he's probably a rookie. Yeah, he's a rookie from France, so that'll be interesting. He's 6'10", and he's from France. I'd have to do some research on him. He's a rookie, so it'll be interesting. He looks like he can hoop if that if that helps anything. Mike Muscala, once again, somebody who doesn't really move me in any way. Miles Plumlee, when he was with Phoenix, he had a little bit of a spark when he started, but since then, haven't seen too much from him. Taurean Prince is basically the guy. Is basically a clone of the guy who went, what's his name, that went to Toronto to play for Toronto and now is with the Brooklyn Nets. To me, he's like a carbon copy of him, which is good. So we'll see ultimately how much he can improve. Okay, watching him play, I can't remember the guy's name right now. But I think he has more offensive potential because in moments, I've seen him being able to create off the dribble, which is already an improvement. I've seen him shoot a little bit. I think he could be something, right? I think he could be a key contributor for the future. And once again, he's also a young player, so he can be something going forward. And since they don't have a whole lot of momentum and a whole lot of talent right now, he can cement himself as one of the key players for this team. Then you got Diamond Stone from the Clippers. Always thought this guy was interesting. He's just a big center. Somebody who can help. Once again, I don't know how, and because we saw he got drafted to the Clippers and he didn't play with the Clippers, right? And if you don't play with the Clippers, we really don't know what this guy has. He's still young, so we'll see. Hopefully with this squadron, he'll get minutes with Atlanta, and then if he has some game, it'll show ultimately. But unlike the rest of these breakdowns, and we kind of crossed the halfway point with these breakdowns for every team, Most of the playoff teams are taken. So now they're going to get a little bit shorter and more to the point, because some of these teams are kind of on a downward trend, and there's not a whole lot to really talk about. Like this Atlanta team, I literally went through the whole roster, and of the whole roster, you know Dennis Schroeder, and maybe if you're a basketball head, you know Taurean Prince, you know Tyler Dorsey, you know a couple of people who are who basically is Dennis Schroeder and a bunch of young unproven guys, and the veterans they have aren't very good. So the outlook for Atlanta is negative at this point, and I don't like to make negative team outlooks, but ultimately their goal is to get more talent, and that's probably going to be in the draft. All right. If you disagree with my assessment, leave it below. If you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. All right. See you next time.